That was Michael Anthony, okay? 100% dedicated, never did anything to hurt those guys, and they tried to hurt him again and again and again.
Sammy Hagar's emotional tribute to Eddie Van Halen in Encore Thank You Goodnight has taken the world by storm. But the real shocker came when Eddie's own brother Alex Van Halen broke his silence. Was the song a true tribute, or is there more to the story? With rare honesty, Alex opens up about his feelings, the past tensions with Sammy, and what Eddie would have thought. Could this be the beginning of an unexpected reconciliation? Find out what Alex really thinks. Sammy Hagar's emotional tribute to Eddie Van Halen, Encore, Thank You Goodnight, has struck a chord with listeners around the world. The song, which closes Sammy's latest album, is not just a track. It's a heartfelt expression of loss, love, and respect for one of rock's greatest guitarists. Sammy revealed that the inspiration for the song came to him in a vivid dream, where Eddie appeared to him, showing Sammy a guitar like he had never heard before. The dream was powerful, and it felt real. Eddie was just standing there, smiling like they used to, sharing that familial energy they once had. Sammy woke up, grabbed his guitar, and played the lick, which then became the foundation for the song. The way Sammy describes the dream, it's clear how much of an impact it had on him. For years, Sammy had admired Eddie not just as a bandmate, but as a close friend. The bond they shared was something special. Though their time in Van Halen was often tumultuous, they still respected each other deeply. Eddie's death in 2020 left a huge void in Sammy's life, and Encore Thank You Goodnight was his way of honoring Eddie's legacy. The song doesn't just focus on Eddie's famous guitar skills, it also captures his personality and the joy he brought to everyone around him. The accompanying music video is filled with archival footage of Eddie, showing intimate, behind-the-scenes moments, like Eddie smiling while playing his guitar, a side that many fans never got to see. Sammy's tribute serves not only as a way to grieve, but also as a reminder of how much Eddie's music and influence meant to those who loved him. It's a beautiful and emotional way to keep his memory alive. Sammy acknowledges that writing this song didn't make the grief easier, but it allowed him to process his emotions and share them with the world. For Sammy, it was a way to honor Eddie, to tell the world just how important Eddie was. Not just as a musician, but as a person. The song is both a tribute to Eddie's artistry and to their friendship. Sammy hopes it serves as a reminder for fans not only of Eddie's music, but of the man who inspired millions. Sammy's connection to Eddie, though complex, is deep, and this song is his way of saying goodbye to his friend, while also celebrating the incredible impact Eddie had on his life. Wolfgang Van Halen's personal reaction to Sammy Hagar's tribute song Encore Thank You Goodnight was one of profound emotion and reflection. As the only son of Eddie Van Halen, Wolfgang has always had a unique perspective on the legacy of his father, both as a musician and as a father. When Sammy released the song, it stirred up emotions Wolfgang hadn't anticipated. Although he was aware of the tribute's heartfelt nature, hearing the song and watching the accompanying video struck him much harder than he expected. In an interview, Wolfgang admitted that he was floored by the song. He didn't expect it to impact him as much as it did. But as soon as the first notes played, memories of his father came rushing back. For Wolfgang, Eddie wasn't just a legendary guitarist. He was also his dad, someone who he looked up to and shared countless personal moments with. To hear Sammy's tribute, which captured not only Eddie's musical brilliance, but also his personality, was incredibly powerful for Wolfgang. It felt like the music brought Eddie back, if only for a moment. One of the most emotional parts of the tribute for Wolfgang was the music video. Sammy and his team included archival footage of Eddie, some of which was intimate and personal, showing Eddie not just as a performer but as a person. There was a clip in the video where Eddie is simply sitting with his guitar, smiling. That moment, Wolfgang recalled, is what really got to him. "That's what really got me," Wolfgang said. "It reminded me of being a kid, sitting in the studio with him, watching him just noodle around." This memory, the image of Eddie lost in his music and joyfully playing for the sake of playing, was something Wolfgang cherished deeply. It was a side of his father that he missed the most. The quieter, more personal moments with Eddie, when he wasn't on stage or in the spotlight, were what Wolfgang remembered fondly. As a musician himself, Wolfgang has spent much of his career trying to forge his own path. He is now fronting his band Mammoth, WVH, and in doing so, he's continuing the musical legacy his father left behind. But there's no denying that Eddie's influence is still a constant in his life. Watching Sammy's tribute, hearing the guitar lick that came from a dream where Eddie appeared, and seeing the moments from Eddie's life that weren't always shown to the public, gave Wolfgang a chance to reconnect with his dad in a way he hadn't anticipated. "It's really beautiful, and I'm grateful for it," Wolfgang admitted, acknowledging Sammy's effort to honor Eddie in such a meaningful way. While the tribute song brought back painful memories, it also reminded Wolfgang that his father's legacy lives on, not just through his music, but through the people who continue to admire and respect him. The song was a way of keeping Eddie's memory alive, not just for his family, but for the millions of fans who were touched by his guitar work and personality. Wolfgang admitted that while the grief of losing his father was still very real, hearing Sammy's song made him feel less alone in that loss. The tribute wasn't just for Eddie, it was for everyone who had ever loved him, everyone who had ever been moved by his music. Wolfgang also reflected on the complicated relationship his father and Sammy had over the years. Eddie and Sammy's time together in Van Halen was filled with highs and lows, and by the time Eddie passed, the two men were no longer as close as they had once been. Despite this, Wolfgang believed that Sammy's tribute reflected the deep respect they had for each other. "I think Dad would have really appreciated it," Wolfgang said, recognizing that the song wasn't just about their past issues but about honoring the man Eddie was. Sammy's intent was pure, to celebrate Eddie's life and legacy, not to relive past conflicts. For Wolfgang, this recognition from Sammy was a beautiful gesture that acknowledged the complexity of their relationship, but also the importance of putting aside old grievances in the face of something as powerful as Eddie's memory. For Wolfgang, this song was a reminder that despite the personal losses and the struggles within the Van Halen family, music has the ability to bring people together. Even if Eddie and Sammy didn't always see eye to eye, the tribute showed that music was the bond that could unite them. "It's more than just a song," Wolfgang explained. "It's a way to honor my dad, not just as a musician, but as a person." He recognized that this tribute was more than just a professional effort on Sammy's part. It was a personal one as well, and that resonated with him. Through all the pain, grief, and confusion of losing his father, Wolfgang has found solace in the fact that Eddie's music will never die. Sammy's tribute, along with the love and respect that fans continue to show for Eddie's work, is proof of that. Wolfgang has been able to carry his father's musical legacy forward, but songs like Encore, Thank You, Goodnight allow him to reflect on the past and honor the man who helped shape rock music in ways few others ever could. As he moves forward with his own career, Wolfgang knows that the legacy of Eddie Van Halen will always be with him, and in many ways it will continue to inspire his own music. But hearing Sammy's tribute made him realize that his father's influence stretches far beyond his immediate family. It lives on in every note played, every song written, and every person who has ever been touched by Eddie's work. For Wolfgang, the tribute wasn't just a song, it was a way to preserve his father's memory, to ensure that Eddie's genius is never forgotten. For Wolfgang, Sammy's tribute will always hold a special place in his heart. It's a piece of Eddie that he can revisit any time, a reminder of the father he loved and the musician he respected. In a world where grief can sometimes feel isolating, Encore, Thank You, Goodnight was a reminder to Wolfgang that Eddie's spirit is still with him and that the bond they shared will never fade. Alex Van Halen's decision to break his silence about Sammy Hagar's tribute song Encore, Thank You, Goodnight was a rare moment of openness from the typically private drummer. Since Eddie Van Halen's death in 2020, Alex has remained mostly out of the public eye, choosing to keep his personal thoughts and feelings about his brother's passing largely to himself. Eddie's death left a massive hole not only in the music world, but also in Alex's life. The two brothers had spent decades together, creating some of the most iconic music in rock history, and their bond was unshakable, despite the ups and downs they faced over the years. But as the months went by after Eddie's passing, fans and the media began to wonder how Alex was coping with the loss, and what he really thought about the tributes and messages of remembrance pouring in from fans and musicians alike. When Sammy Hagar released Encore, Thank You, Goodnight, a deeply emotional tribute to Eddie, Alex's reaction was one that caught many by surprise. For years, the relationship between Sammy and the Van Halen brothers had been complicated. Though Sammy had been the frontman of Van Halen for a long stretch during the 1980s and early 1990s, their time together in the band had ended on rocky terms, and the years following were filled with public disagreements and unresolved issues. Given this complicated history, many expected Alex to brush off Sammy's tribute, or at the very least, remain silent about it. However, Alex's response was different. He wasn't dismissive or angry. Instead, he spoke about the song with a level of respect and emotional sincerity that surprised both fans and those who had followed the Van Halen story over the years. In an interview, Alex shared that he hadn't known what to expect when he first heard the song. "I wasn't sure how I'd feel about it, but it hit me, man," he said, admitting that the song moved him more than he anticipated. The track, which Sammy said was inspired by a vivid dream in which Eddie appeared to him, took on a special significance for Alex. Sammy had described the dream as one where Eddie showed him a guitar lick he had never heard before. It was an intimate and deeply personal moment, and Sammy's ability to capture that feeling in a song spoke volumes to Alex. "It hit me right in the chest," Alex continued. "I wasn't prepared for it." Alex's reaction to the song wasn't just about the emotional connection he felt listening to it, it was also about the music itself. As a drummer, Alex had always been inextricably linked to the unique sound of Van Halen, but the heart of the band had always been Eddie's guitar work. Sammy's tribute, with its distinctive guitar lick, immediately reminded Alex of his brother's playing. The complexity and playful nature of the guitar riff resonated deeply with him. "There's something in that lick, a kind of playful complexity," Alex said, describing it as something only Eddie could have played. That was Ed. Whether it was real or dreamed, Sammy caught a piece of that. This reaction was particularly significant, as it highlighted a side of Alex that many people rarely got to see. For all his years in the public eye, Alex had always been more reserved, more private about his emotions, particularly when it came to Eddie. The two brothers had spent years creating music together, facing challenges together, and sharing a unique bond that very few people could ever understand. To hear Alex acknowledge the emotional weight of Sammy's tribute was a rare glimpse into the deep respect and love he still had for his brother, and for Sammy's place in the history of Van Halen. It was a side of Alex that fans rarely saw, and it reminded everyone that despite the public feuds and personal struggles, the connection between the members of Van Halen, especially Alex and Eddie, was something that went beyond the drama and the headlines. What made Alex's reaction even more powerful was his acknowledgement that, despite the tensions of the past, the love and respect they all had for Eddie remained intact. In the interview, Alex emphasized that whatever issues there had been between Sammy and the Van Halen brothers over the years, they all took a back seat when it came to honoring Eddie's legacy. "We've all had our ups and downs," Alex said, speaking candidly about the band's internal struggles, but whatever issues there were, they take a back seat to the love we all had for Ed. "I can appreciate that Sammy is trying to honor that now, and I respect it." This was a significant statement coming from Alex, especially considering how fraught the relationship between him and Sammy had been over the years. To hear him speak so openly about his respect for Sammy's tribute was a moment of reconciliation, however small, between two men who had once been at odds. When asked if he would ever consider a musical collaboration with Sammy in tribute to Eddie, Alex responded with a surprising level of openness. "Never say never," he said, leaving the door slightly ajar for the possibility of working together again in the future. "If the intention is pure, if it's really about Eddie, not about reviving old drama or cashing in, then yeah, I'd be open. It would have to be about music, heart, and truth. No bullshit." This comment was a breakthrough of sorts, showing that Alex was willing to put aside old grudges for the sake of honoring Eddie's memory. While Alex made it clear that any potential collaboration would need to be grounded in sincerity and respect, the fact that he was open to the idea at all was a big step. It was a recognition that, despite everything, Eddie's memory was more important than any past disagreements. As the interview came to a close, Alex reflected on what Eddie would have thought of the tribute. He'd probably say, "That's cool, Sam." Alex smiled, adding that Eddie would have been the first to try and one-up the song. That was Ed, always creating. It was a light-hearted moment that encapsulated Eddie's personality. Playful, creative, and always looking to push boundaries. Even in his absence, Eddie's presence loomed large, and it was clear that Alex still felt his brother's influence in everything, including Sammy's tribute. In the final moments of the interview, Alex shared a message to fans, reminding them to keep playing Eddie's music. "That's where he lives now," Alex said. His words were a touching reminder that, even in death, Eddie Van Halen's legacy would continue to inspire musicians and fans for generations to come. Alex's closing remark, And if he visits you in a dream, tell him I said, don't be a stranger, was a heartfelt tribute to his brother, showing that, despite everything, their bond remained as strong as ever. Alex Van Halen's decision to speak out about Sammy Hagar's tribute was a rare but deeply meaningful moment. It was a reminder that, despite the ups and downs, the love and respect between the members of Van Halen was undeniable, and that Eddie's legacy would continue to bring people together, even those who had been separated by time, distance, and personal differences. Play out. The potential for a future collaboration between Sammy Hagar and Alex Van Halen has always seemed improbable, given the tumultuous history between the two musicians. Their relationship, once filled with creative synergy, had become strained over the years, particularly after Sammy's departure from Van Halen in 1996. The years that followed were filled with public disagreements, unresolved tensions, and differing visions of what Van Halen should be. Sammy, who had fronted the band during a period of massive success, had a complicated relationship with both Alex and Eddie Van Halen. While Sammy contributed to some of the band's biggest hits and helped keep Van Halen's career going after David Lee Roth's departure, his departure from the band was far from amicable. The public disputes between Sammy and Alex only fueled speculation about whether they would ever work together again, let alone collaborate in a way that honored Eddie's memory. However, Sammy's recent tribute song Encore, Thank You Goodnight, changed the narrative. The song, which Sammy says was inspired by a dream where Eddie appeared to him, has been received with much emotion, particularly by Eddie's son, Wolfgang, and by Alex himself. Sammy's ability to pour his grief, respect, and admiration for Eddie into a heartfelt tribute struck a chord not just with fans, but also with those who had worked closely with Eddie and Van Halen over the years. Alex, who had kept a relatively low profile since Eddie's passing in 2020, surprised many when he responded openly to the song. In an interview, Alex admitted that he wasn't sure how he would feel about the tribute, but that it moved him more than he expected. The emotional nature of Sammy's song, coupled with the guitar lick that evoked Eddie's style, was something Alex couldn't ignore. For Alex, it felt like a piece of his brother was captured in the song, and that recognition created an opening for dialogue, even if only a small one. Alex's response to Sammy's tribute was not just about the music itself. It was also about the intention behind it. Despite their complicated history, Alex emphasized that Sammy's gesture was rooted in respect for Eddie and his legacy. Alex acknowledged the ups and downs of his relationship with Sammy, but he made it clear that when it came to Eddie, all past issues took a back seat to the love they all had for him. "We've all had our ups and downs," Alex said, "but whatever issues there were, they take a back seat to the love we all had for Ed. And appreciate that Sammy is trying to honor that now, and I respect it." This comment was significant because it showed that Alex was able to separate personal grievances from the larger picture of Ed and the legacy he left behind. Perhaps the most surprising moment in Alex's response came when he was asked about the possibility of working with Sammy again. For years, the idea of a collaboration between Sammy and the Van Halen brothers seemed impossible. The tensions were too high, and the wounds from Sammy's departure from the band were still fresh. However, Alex, with a rare level of openness, responded, "Never say never." While he was careful to set parameters around such a collaboration, Alex's willingness to even entertain the idea was a huge step forward. He emphasized that any future collaboration would have to be genuine, focused on honoring Eddie, and free from old drama or financial motivations. If the intention is pure, if it's really about Eddie, not about reviving old drama or cashing in, then yeah, I'd be open. It would have to be about music, heart, and truth. No bullshit. This statement left fans wondering what the future could hold for Sammy and Alex. Was this the beginning of a reconciliation between the two former bandmates, or was it just a momentary opening? A softening of Alex's stance toward Sammy after so many years. Alex's words, while not a definitive promise of collaboration, left the door ajar for the possibility of something more. The fact that Alex was willing to consider the idea of working with Sammy, especially in tribute to Eddie, spoke volumes. It suggested that the bond they shared as musicians and as people was still there, albeit buried beneath years of tension and personal conflict. And, more importantly, it indicated that Alex was willing to move past the past in order to focus on what truly mattered: the music and Eddie's legacy. The idea of a Sammy-Alex collaboration, especially in honor of Eddie, is a tantalizing prospect for fans. For years, Van Halen fans had hoped for some form of reunion or collaboration, but the internal strife and unresolved issues between the band members made that seem unlikely. However, Eddie's death seemed to put many of those old conflicts into perspective. The loss of such a musical icon forced everyone, fans, family, and bandmates alike, to confront the reality that the chance for reunions and resolutions was dwindling. Yet, with Alex's comments, there's a glimmer of hope that perhaps something could come together, something that transcends the past issues and is purely focused on celebrating Eddie's memory. Sammy, for his part, has always maintained that his relationship with Eddie was special, even though they had their disagreements. He has repeatedly stated that despite the difficulties, they respected each other and shared a deep bond.